You have no good reference point, no sufficient data set to make that conclusion. This is not good science.
Well, folks, in case you missed it, Maryland DNR has come out and published new information that extends their Blackwater study. In this video right here, which will be episode 7 of the Snakehead Truth series, I will go through, dissect this study, and explain to you what I see as the core issues which make this study problematic, to say the least. If you're not familiar with my Snakehead Truth series, go back and check out those earlier episodes. That's where I went through with Virginia Department of Game and Inland Fisheries Biologist John Odenkirk, where we reviewed all of the available published scientific literature on snakehead to date at that time. But for today's video, let's dive right in. I'll leave a link to the study itself in the video description so you can read it for yourself and hopefully understand a little bit better why I find this study and its conclusions to, again, be very problematic. And then, to close out the video, as I do with all my Snakehead Truth series installments, I'm going to post some photos from the snakehead community out there, because we are growing by the day. But for now, let's get to it.
Hey there, folks. Welcome back to Kambotrout Fishing. So, a few days ago, I saw that Maryland DNR came out with a new report on snakehead in the Blackwater area. In fact, it's really an expansion or addition to the previous report they put out from Blackwater. And while I largely remained silent the first time they posted that, the conclusions that they've reached and the information and declarations they're putting out on social media has taken it to the point where I just no longer have a choice but to respond. So let's do it. So, if you haven't seen it, essentially Maryland DNR came out and said that the study in the Blackwater area has shown what appears to be a causal relationship between snakehead introduction and the overall community decline or impact among the other species that exist in the Blackwater area. I hate to say this, but it is what it is. That study is so weak that I can essentially nullify the entire study by the very first data set in that study. And what is that? Look for it yourself. I'll overlay it on the screen here, but better than that, stop reading headlines, stop reading Facebook posts, go into the study and read it for yourself. If you look at the 2006 to 2007 survey period, you will find something very interesting. The conclusion of this whole study states that of the 22 species surveyed, 19 have been in decline since snakehead introduction. Here's the reality. 16 of those 19 were already in decline prior to snakehead ever being in Blackwater. And within those 16, you have the top 3 that are continually referenced as the ones that have seen a decline, which they conclude as a result of predator-prey interaction. Those being white perch, crappie, and brown bullhead catfish. Well, if you look at the survey period, which you can do for yourself, but again, I'll overlay it here, those 3, especially white perch, were in significant decline prior to snakehead ever being in the environment. So here's the basic question. How can you have the vast majority of the fish that you're saying the decline was caused by snakehead? How can you have those fish be on significant decline during your control period from 2006 to 2007? That's your reference period. How can you from there make any confident conclusions about snakehead introduction having been the cause? So you have the initial survey period, 2006-2007. No data whatsoever all the way until 2018. No data from 2007 all the way to 2018. You cannot say with any confidence that snakehead caused this if all of these species were already in decline. That means you have more variables in that environment that you need to account for to confidently say whether snakehead had any or some of the influence to cause this change. Now, I could stop there. I could stop there with the dissection of this study. That fact in and of itself, that these species were in significant decline prior to snakehead ever being there, that's enough, honestly, to undermine the entire study. Period. Full stop. But in the interest of thoroughness, I'll keep going. Point number 2. At no point in any of these survey periods have the number of snakeheads surveyed been sufficient to explain the overall decline in these other species. Now, some will try to explain this away by saying snakehead have a gear avoidance issue. And what that means is fyke nets aren't a great way to survey the snakehead, so we know there's more out there than what's being surveyed, but there's a gear avoidance issue because maybe snakehead don't travel the same amount of distance as do white perch, crappie, brown bullhead catfish, the other species they surveyed. Maybe they don't travel enough or at the same ways and the same water levels to be caught in these fyke nets. That's a logical leap and a big assumption. But again, let's keep going. Another one of the main arguments from this study is that the greatest declines among those species that were present before snakehead were black crappie, white perch, bluegill, brown bullhead, and pumpkin seed. Again, all 5 of these were in decline before snakehead. The next claim, killiefishes. There's different kinds, the banded killifish, the striped killifish, mummy chogs. The study notes that neither banded killifish nor striped killifish were collected during the post-snakehead survey period. That's the 2018 to 2019 survey period. Here again lies the original problem. Banded killifish declined so sharply during the initial pre-snakehead period from 2006-2007 that they almost disappeared completely, again, before snakehead were ever in the environment. Also in 21 to 23, they surveyed another key player for the first time in this whole discussion. What species was that? Blue catfish. If you've heard me rant about blue catfish before, go ahead and skip forward about 30 or 40 seconds because I'm going to do it again. The average size snakehead is going to be around 3 to 4 pounds. A big snakehead is a 10 plus snakehead, 10 plus pound snakehead. A big blue cat, 40 or 50 pounds. A really big blue cat, 70, 80, 90, 100 plus pounds. Snakehead really only eat live prey. Blue cats eat vegetation, they eat clams, they eat mollusks, they love to eat crabs. I'll overlay some pictures here so you know exactly what I'm talking about. They've eaten wood ducks, they eat large fish, they eat small fish. A blue cat will actually eat anything they can get into their mouths. They will eat some disgusting stuff at times. And if there's any fish out there that's actually voracious, meaning it just eats and eats and eats and eats and eats, it's blue cats. And anyone saying that snakehead are voracious, and I've been saying this for years, anyone who's targeted snakehead for any amount of time knows good and well that if a snakehead wants to eat and he's hungry, you're going to have a good time. If a snakehead is not hungry, you can dance a live minnow on top of their head and they don't care. The stories out there about snakehead killing stuff to kill stuff and all this other bullcrap is the internet-based, sensationalized, fear-mongering, rumor mill claptrap that it is. And it frustrates me I have to go through and say all this. I just wish people would just think for themselves a little more often and actually not base their opinions off of headlines. But it is what it is, so here we are, and we'll keep straightening this out. Here's probably the singular claim that frustrated me the most. And it goes back to the first point I made about seeing all of these declines, significant declines, beginning in 2006 to 2007 before snakehead were ever on the scene, even close to being on the scene. And that claim, per the study, says, major reductions in relative abundance occurred for several notable freshwater-dependent fish species via predatory-prey interactions. I'm going to be as tactful as I can here and say that this frustrates me in the extreme. You have no good reference point, no sufficient data set to make that conclusion. You don't. If these species were already in significant decline prior to snakehead introduction, and on top of that, all of the stomach content surveys that have been done show that killifish and mummy chog are the primary contents, the primary prey items for snakehead by number in their diet. Every single study that's been done, I don't care if it's Maryland, Virginia, everyone that's been done on stomach content surveys, the number one item in their diet is killifish. And on the Potomac, for instance, killifish numbers actually increased after snakehead introduction. That's not to say that snakehead are the reason they increased. That was actually tied to submerged aquatic vegetation. You increase the submerged aquatic vegetation, you get more killifish. But the fact remains that the killifish they said and the mummy chog that they said had disappeared after snakehead introduction reappeared in 2021 to 2023. I still honestly, me personally, I wouldn't even include them in my calculations on this topic because they weren't numerically significant in the survey. And when you try to make judgments off small sample sizes, you end up usually making faulty conclusions. But so long as we're going to talk about this, let's talk about it. If the killifish are coming back, I won't even say coming back. If the killifish are showing up again in the survey, maybe there's more variables in play here that we're not considering. It could be water levels. Water levels fluctuate greatly in the Blackwater area. One day you can go through an area with a boat, the next day you'll get beached and stuck there till a high tide on a kayak. You look at the overall topography changes in the Blackwater area due to saltwater intrusion. You can see that on satellite imagery. That's a huge change. They note in the study that the construction of the weir that was meant to prevent saltwater intrusion into the Blackwater system did not result in the return of freshwater plant species, freshwater SAV. They go back and note again that long-eared sunfish are on this list that they think declined as a result of predator-prey interaction between snakehead and long-eared sunfish. The problem being, long-eared sunfish once again virtually disappeared from 2006 to 2007, before snakehead were ever introduced into the system. Like I said, I could have stopped this analysis bordering on a rant at the very beginning when I noted the fact that the original data set already showed the vast majority of these species in significant decline well before snakehead introduction, coupled with the fact that we have no good data from 2008 all the way to 2018 to see if that declining trend for all those species reversed or fluctuated. We have no idea. It could be snakehead.
What did you say?
They could be part of the cause of these community level changes. I've said it before, but I'll say it again since we're talking about this. If I had to pick one environment, one waterway where I thought snakehead could have invasive impact, it would be Blackwater. That's because Blackwater is uniformly shallow. It's got a nice, soft, muddy substrate, nice, soft, muddy bottom, and no other established top-tier predators. Yes, it's had largemouth bass. It still does, by the way. They're in this survey. You can watch my videos. The bass are there. But getting back to my point, if there was one place that snakehead could thrive to the point of having invasive impact, it would, in theory, be Blackwater, because the conditions are right. No other predators to compete with, for the most part. You have transient striped bass and things like that, some bass, yada yada. But even more than that, almost the entirety of the Blackwater area, as long as salinity doesn't get too high, is a great habitat for snakehead. They're built to work in shallow water. It's what they evolved for. But all that being said, this study makes conclusions that are far, far too strong, for the data set it's working with. I'm restraining myself to a point in the terminology I'm using here. This is not good science. And I've heard fisheries biologists say this before. I'm not going to name them. You can go and watch them yourself from the 2018 Snakehead Symposium. These videos are posted online, publicly, for YouTube. I'll link it in the description. You can watch fisheries biologists warn against making too strong a claims with it in mind that you're trying to, what's essentially, shape the public mind. But the problem you run into is when people realize your data doesn't support your conclusions and their personal experience on the water doesn't match up with what you're telling them about the species, over time, that erodes trust and faith in the institution of science itself. I have a huge problem with that. We have enough trouble already with our institutions having lost the trust of our people. And I think there's a lot of value to be had in the interaction between fisheries biologists and managers and the fishing community. I think we should have a lot more teamwork and a lot more coordination and collaboration in the management of our fisheries. And I think our fishermen, all of us within this community, should do our best to better understand the science out there so that we can help be better stewards for the environment. But when you do bad science, that doesn't help. And I will say this last point. The study itself, while I still argue makes conclusions that are far too strong for the data available to back it up, the study has more caveats, far more caveats than the social media posts that make it out there. I understand some reasons for doing this. I really do. One good one being that it's dangerous to normalize the introduction of invasives, because if you say this one invasive didn't cause any problems, then people get it in their head, well, maybe this next invasive won't be a problem either. Wouldn't it be cool if we had this in our backyard? That's a legitimate danger. The other thing that I talked about with Thomas Ahrens on the Fishing DMV podcast is fisheries managers and biologists are always doing the very best they can on a shoestring budget because it's very difficult for our fisheries managers to obtain the funding they need to do the job that they would like to do to the level of quality they would like to do. I understand that. I really do. I wish that we allocated more funding to quality fisheries and environmental management. Undermining trust with the public is not a viable pathway to that end goal. I think I've ranted long enough. Like I said, the link to the study will be in this video description. If you want to push back against anything I said, let's do it. Let's look at the data. It's all that, I won't say it's all there. The stomach content surveys, a lot of the other information is only mentioned as opposed to being in the study for us to review on a byline basis. But there is a good information in there for us to review on a byline basis. So let's do it. If there's something I've missed, if there's something that I have misrepresented, hit the comment section. Tell me what it is. But I'll end on this note. For all the effort that is being spent to increase the awareness and the fishing for and harvest of snakehead, that blade cuts both ways. A, because people are going to get out there and see that a lot of the propaganda around the species being some voracious killer is nonsense. And B, you are going to end up growing the community of people who see a value in this fish as a sport fish and as table fare. So for now, you can point the finger at snakehead. It's an easy scapegoat because it has no lobbying arm. The runoff that you try to challenge from farms is going to get challenged by the agricultural industry. The wetland destruction and habitat destruction coming from large-scale building projects and land development, they make millions upon millions every year. So challenging them, not too easy. Even blue catfish have a trophy catfish constituency who will champion trophy catfish till the day they die because they love fishing for trophy catfish. For right now, snakeheads still have the smallest advocacy group, the smallest lobbying group. But as you push more and more people to fish for them, that's not going to last. Give it 10 years, maybe 1 or 2 decades. Watch these kids grow up with snakehead in their waterways, where they're just another fish that's a lot of fun to watch. Beautiful to see how it interacts in the environment, watching them swim, putting them on the table, and seeing how good they taste. And eventually, it'll be managed as it should be, like a resource that we should actually appreciate. So, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. You have a good one.